You're now listening to the Sacred Soul Podcast. Hi, and welcome to the Sacred Soul Podcast, your safe space for healing and personal transformation. I'm your host, Alexandria Chavez. I am a medium, a spiritual mentor, and an artist. And with today being the first episode of this podcast, I want to dive straight into the beginning of my story with my experience of becoming a medium and when I realized that I can connect to spirits. And for me, my experiences with the spirit world happened very fast and very young. My first memory is actually when I'm 5 years old, and I can remember playing with my Barbies in my living room. And I remember looking over to the corner of the room and I noticed a woman standing holding a baby. And she had this beautiful white aura around her. And so I instantly felt safe, secure, and I wasn't afraid. And she would visit me often, and I never really knew who she was until she recognized that I was looking at her, and she came and walked over to me. And she said to me, "I'm your grandmother, and this is your sister." She was holding this baby, and she told me that this baby was my sister. And I was so young, and I was just like, okay, cool. And I remember going to my mom the very next day and telling her, Mom, I saw this woman. She said she's my grandmother, and she was holding a baby, and she told me it was my sister, and she wanted us to tell you that the baby is okay. And I remember my mom just being totally shocked and really emotional, and I didn't know why. I was a little girl. Come to find out, I actually had a sister that was born before me that passed away. And when my mother showed me a photo album, she said, "Point to me which grandmother you saw." And I was flipping through the pages of my grandparents. Keep in mind, I had never met my grandmother before, my great-grandmother in spirit. And I pointed to the woman that I had been seeing. And that was my grandma Tina, my grandpa's mother. And she was very close to the family. And my mom was just super shocked. And that's when she started to believe my experiences. And I started to become very psychic as well. I always knew when someone was going to come over to the house, when someone was going to call. I have a younger brother, and at the time he was in diapers still. And I would always tell my mom, Jeremy's about to poop in his diaper. And he would poop in his diaper 10 minutes later. So my mom started to really support and nourish this gift, is what she would call it, a gift. And it made me really comfortable to explore it without instilling any sense of fear inside of me. So my whole family is really open and really supportive of this ability that I have to connect to spirit. It started to snowball into bigger, more real experiences. And when I was 6 years old, I started to have an imaginary friend that I would talk to all of the time. She would have dinner with us at the table. She would go to school with me. It was all day long me talking about this imaginary friend, and I could see her full body apparition. Every spirit that I would see as a child was full body apparition, which means that they come forward looking like a human being. I could always tell that they weren't human because of this white aura that they emitted when they would come forward. So I could tell that they were different, but it wasn't scary because they always had this sense of safety and care and warmth and a desire to connect and communicate through love. And so I always felt that. When I would see my imaginary friend, she told me her name was Ariana and we were super close, and she said, "I love you like my sister." It was a very close bond that I felt with her, and it was like a familiar feeling when I would play with her. And then one day she told me, she was like, "I have to go be with my mom now." And so then I stopped talking about her because she left. I didn't see her anymore. My mom ended up asking me, and she said, "Alex, where's Adriana? Where's your friend? You haven't been talking about her at all." And I said, "Oh, she had to go be with her mom. She said that she was going to meet her mom today." And come to find out, that is the day that my sister Ariana was born. I didn't meet my dad until I was 15, so I had no idea who my dad was. Of course, my mom knows who my dad is. And he was with a new partner at this time. She was pregnant, and she had given birth the same day that my sister Ariana was born, the same day that my imaginary friend Ariana said that she was going to go meet her mom, and they named her Ariana. That is her name, and she said she was my sister, and she actually is my half-sister. So I do believe that I was seeing the spirit of my sister before she was born because I was never going to be able to meet her or play with her. And we do have a little bit of a bond now, but she lives in a different state. And so I just thought that was a really cool experience for me to be able to tap into spirit in that way, where I'm able to even meet babies that are going to come earthside that are still kind of in the spirit world. And I think it's also interesting too that my dad's partner at that time was 6 months pregnant when I met my imaginary friend Ariana. So that was a 6-month relationship or friendship with me and her. That tumbled into bigger moments in my life where I met my spirit guide for the first time. I have a spirit guide. Her name is Star. We all have spirit guides. I was being babysat. My mom had gone out with her friends and she left us with the babysitter, me and my 2 brothers. And unfortunately, the babysitter was very young and immature, and she had thrown a party in the house. And so I remember being very young and like smoke was filling up the hallways because all the people were smoking weed and drinking and partying, and us just kind of not being monitored or watched. And I remember sitting on the couch and I noticed to myself in my own awareness that my dress was lifted up, and so my underwear had been showing. But my face was in the couch and I was so paralyzed with fear that I didn't want to turn around. But I could feel people standing behind me, and I could feel gentlemen's voices walking closer to me. And I heard in my head this woman, it was so real, this voice that sounded like I could hear it audibly, like outside of my head. She said to me, "Just close your eyes and come with us. You're going to be totally fine. You're not going to remember anything." And so I closed my eyes and I fell into a very, very deep sleep. And then I still to this day don't remember anything that had happened, but that was the first time that I met my spirit guide in a deep moment of fear for me. And I felt saved in that moment. And as I'm older, I can kind of put the pieces together to figure out what had potentially happened in that time, but I still don't remember. And I do believe that was a gift of spirit kind of taking away a very traumatic experience from me. And in this house that I lived in my childhood house, there was a lot of spirit activity. A lot of the babysitters did not want to watch us because when they would put us to sleep, all of the toys would be playing by themselves, like balls would be bouncing by themselves, dolls would be dancing, and you could hear the toys turning on and off. It was really, I guess, creepy for a lot of people to experience that. And then like me and my brothers were so little, we didn't have this preconceived idea that spirit was scary. So for us, it was very normal. And we didn't really care. Honestly, we didn't really notice it until we got older, and then people were telling us these stories about the toys moving in our house and stuff like that. I feel like at that age for me, I was about maybe 7 to 8 years old at this time. I had become friends with the spirits that were in my house because I would see them every single night. I was seeing full body apparition for a long time until I started to get fearful of spirit, which that grew for me in school with the other kids and religion and movies and all of these different ideas that people carve out about the spirit world that are just illusions and just for, Hollywood. I remember seeing this gentleman in the house. He was a spirit person and he actually came forward as a shadow. I didn't see what he looked like, but I could see like the outline of his shadow. And he only ever showed himself at night when we were kind of getting ready to go to sleep. And he said to me, "I'm a cop and I'm gonna protect you guys." I was like, okay, cool. I was a little girl. I'm like, okay, there's a cop spirit in here. And I would tell my mom, "Mom, there's a cop in here. The spirit person, he's protecting us. Don't be scared." Because my mom was always very scared of seeing all the spirits. Because like I said, when spirit comes as full body apparition or as a shadow, it's objective. It's not subjective. Subjective would mean that I am seeing the spirits in my own mind or feeling the presence of spirit, but objective is that everybody around you can also see what you're seeing. It is a very real experience. And so my mom was terrified our entire childhood with having these spiritual experiences. She absolutely hated it. My mom got a job at NASA and she befriended another coworker. Come to find out, that coworker actually used to live in the house that we grew up in, and she had moved out because her husband, who was a cop, passed away in the house. And my mom had then opened up to her about all the experiences that we've had with seeing that cop spirit and how he was there to support and help and protect the house and us inside of it. And I thought that was really special that she got to have that little bit of closure that her loved one, her husband, is still okay in the other side. And I thought that was a beautiful message. And I think that was actually the purpose of him coming around us, is because he knew that we were accepting of the spirit people and that he could kind of use us as a messenger just to give his wife a little bit of closure. Then when I started to go to school and I was kind of like already in 5th grade, 6th grade, going into middle school, a lot of the students knew me as the ghost girl because I was very open about being able to see spirits. I would see them in the hallways, see them outside, see them playing. A lot of the kids were really intrigued by that. And so they would oftentimes be like, Alex, what do you feel? Is there a spirit here? What is it doing? What is it saying? And they would kind of make it like a spooky experience, which is something that I wasn't necessarily used to, because when I would talk about spirit with my brothers or with my family, it was a very like normal experience where they invited a sense of curiosity of like, okay, who is this person and what are they saying to you? Whereas the kids in school were like, oh my God, like it's so scary. I can't believe that you're seeing, and they would scream and it would be this very like spooky, intriguing moment. And so I started to actually build up a little bit of fear around the spirit people. And that's when my connection to spirit kind of started to loosen and become less of this, I see spirits, I see full body apparition. I started to like not see them as much anymore around the house. I was more so feeling the presence, but like not actually seeing a spirit person. And that actually made me more fearful of like not being able to see what I was feeling, because I would feel it very, very strongly. I could feel someone standing next to me and I didn't know who it was. And that created a deeper sense of fear for me. So then growing up and going through high school, I started to shun it a little bit, especially, you know, with religion and my family starting to kind of go to church more. It became something very taboo that people don't understand and naturally have this fearful mindset around, that it's demonic or evil or a trickster spirit coming in to play games with our minds to, you know, bring us down to hell or something. It became this very big thing that I was very fearful of talking about or even being comfortable with sharing that I had this ability. And when I went to college, when I was around the age of 21, I started drinking for the first time. I never drank alcohol, I never smoked weed, I never partied or anything like that prior to going to college. And so my first experience, you know, with alcohol was when I was 21. And I went to a party and I was drinking a lot. And I went to my friend's house and we were kind of sitting on the floor on the couches, and it was around 3 a.m., kind of when you're a little bit tipsy, but kind of like getting tired, ready to go to sleep. So it was like a very chill, tipsy, drunk essence that I was embodying. And I was talking to this guy, I had no idea who he was. We're sitting on the floor, and all of a sudden I just started to have this vision. Like with my eyes open, I could see a vision of a boat, and 2 men were sitting in the boat, and they were jumping up and down. They're like, tell him that I'm his uncle and we're here. His uncle and his grandpa are here to say hi to him. And it was like so clear. And I just told him, and you know when you're drunk, you don't really care. You just are gonna say whatever comes to your mind. So at this moment, I was feeling really confident and ballsy, and I told him, hey, do you have an uncle and a grandpa that are passed over? And he said, yeah. And I was like, oh, did they like to travel in a boat, or did they have like a boat? And he was like, yeah, how did you know that? And then it started to like turn into bigger pieces of evidence that could prove their continued existence. They told me their names, how many kids they had, the year and date that they were born and then died, the cities and states that they lived in, their hobbies, their bad habits, how they passed. It was really clear that I was talking to dead people in this moment. And it just came so fast. I was so confident. I was giving all this information. And by the end of it, we were just staring at each other very awkwardly and shocked. And he was like, okay. And he got up and just like went to the bedroom and went to sleep. And I sat there and I was just like, I literally said out loud to myself, how the fuck did I just do that? How did that just happen? I remember calling my mom, like, Mom, I just talked to this random person and his dead relatives were coming through and giving all this information. And she was like, what? Oh my God, like that's so crazy. And then I just remember it kind of planted a little bit of a seed inside of my heart a sense of curiosity of like, how can I do this again? I was really interested in doing it again. And it didn't happen again actually for like a few more years. I was in college, I was starting to see lots of dead people around the school. The school was very haunted. It had a lot of energy that you could feel and you could see. I went to an art school, so we didn't have like math or science or history classes. We had like dance, art, pottery, music, filmmaking, classes like that were very creative. I was in a religion class, and the project was to study a religion that is completely opposite of your religion. And at this time, I wasn't really religious. I was influenced by Christianity because my mom became a Christian, and it was just kind of like the biggest religion in my city. So I remember thinking to myself, well, I guess like the opposite of what I kind of am is Christian. I guess the opposite would be like Satanism. So I remember thinking, okay, well, I'm gonna do this project and I'm gonna go full force and I'm gonna study Satanism. And I went to the library, picked up the Satanist Bible. It's like a little black Bible. And I studied with people who were Satanists. I interviewed them and I talked to them about what their practice is like and what that looks and feels like for them and who they serve. And it got really deep into the details of this religion. And it actually started to spark something in me because I started to crave a sense of individuality. I no longer wanted to follow the status quo or the tradition of what we're supposed to believe in and how that's supposed to look for people. I wanted to find something that is my own. You know, my mom was very fearful of this because she saw me studying, Satanism, even though I am not a Satanist. I will say that right here, right now. But it also taught me how to not judge people just because we don't understand a certain religion or a certain belief or a certain spiritual practice does not make it evil. And honestly, the people that I was interviewing that are Satanists, they were the nicest freaking people on earth. You would never guess or never know that they would have this sort of religious background or perspective or spiritual perspective, so to speak. This is where I started to do a lot of deep soul searching. And this is where I went through sort of like a dark night of the soul type of thing, where I was doing a lot of healing around my childhood, my upbringing that was very dark, and it's very personal, so I probably will not open up about that, at least not on the first episode. We gotta wait till like the 5th episode for that. I started to like feel like a demon was after me. I remember like things would move on my shelves. I remember a hanger flying and hitting me in the face when I was trying to sleep. A lot of weird things were happening when I started to dive deep into myself and kind of opening doors within myself. And I remember Googling, I needed like a healer to like help me. I don't know what the fuck was happening to me. I was seeing weird things were happening, feeling weird presences around me, and I was just getting really scared. And I told my husband, I'm like, I think a demon is after me. I need like a healing. I need to go to therapy or something. I was like losing my mind. And I remember stumbling upon Reiki healing. It was on the Google search. I am really drawn to spiritual stuff. At this time, I wasn't even like very spiritual, but I was very drawn to that type of stuff versus like therapy or more, I guess, traditional ways of healing and coping. I am more drawn to like deeper sense of self growth, personal growth type of stuff. And I remember saying that it was like $80 a session. I'm like, oh my God, it's $80 a session. How am I gonna pay for that? And I remember thinking to myself, like a thought popped into my head, and now I realize it was spirit. At this time, I had no fucking idea. But I was like, the thought said to me, you do it yourself, heal yourself, learn how to do Reiki yourself and heal yourself. And so I found a Reiki teacher, and I got Reiki level 1 certified, which is you can heal yourself and you can heal plants. And then Reiki level 2 is you can heal yourself, plants, and animals and other people. And then Reiki level 3 is you can do all of that plus teach Reiki and teach others how to do the healing as well. And you have to get attuned with the energy and all this stuff. It was super deep. And I started to like do healings on myself, and I met with a shaman and we did a soul retrieval where I was able to connect to parts of my spirit, my own soul that were fragmented and like disconnected from my body, that were just hanging in the ethers in my auric field. Disconnected parts of myself that I had rejected on my own because maybe other people had rejected me, so on and so forth. And I saw my 15-year-old self in this meditation. And when I connected to my 15-year-old self, she called me a bitch and slapped me in the face. It's a lot, I know. And I realized that was a very angry part of me. And that was the version of myself that was so dense in the energy. When you have a lot of trauma or a lot of anger or resentment, unresolved shit, it can become so dense, detach from your body, and present itself as an entity separate from you. But it is you. It's like, that's why they say your inner demons. And the goal actually is to love that part of you, because that's what it's lacking. Love, acceptance, worthiness, deservingness to heal. And so I started to heal that part of me, and all of those scary things started to go away. Nothing in my room was moving and slapping me in the face anymore. It was a lot of transformation for me. And I started to do Reiki on other people. And I remember this one girl was doing Reiki on her, distance Reiki through Zoom. And I remember in the journey, because I would see it very clairvoyantly, I saw this man. I saw a vision of a man in New York City in a very tall building. He was wearing a dress, and he looked at me, and then he jumped out of the window. And that was it. And I told her, I had this like strange feeling. I told her, I said, when I was doing your healing and I was meditating, I saw this young man. He looked about in his 20s. He was wearing like a dress, and he was in New York City. He jumped out of a window. And she said, oh my God, my cousin was very feminine, and he liked to wear dresses and stuff. He lived in New York, and he actually jumped out of a window, and that's how he passed. He took his own life. And I was like, oh my God, okay. Moment of silence, because I literally was like, what the fuck is happening? I'm seeing all these dead people. And so that was actually a huge turning point for me when I realized, okay, obviously I need to be learning how to do this, because the spirit people are coming to me. It's very natural. It was like I wasn't even asking for these experiences. It had just always happened for me. Even when I was 5 years old, my entire life, the spirit people have been drawn to me. And so I started to realize maybe this is like my life purpose or something. This is where it really shifted for me when I started to seek out mediumship development. And currently I'm on year 4 of professional development with mentors and teachers and working professionally with the public. I was sleeping, and at 3 a.m, I woke up and I smelled heroin and cigarettes. Only reason I know what heroin smells like is because I have 2 addicts in my family, and that's why I know what it smells like. I do not do heroin, but yeah. I remember smelling heroin and smelling cigarettes, and I woke up my husband. I'm like, do you smell that? He's like, what are you talking about? I don't smell anything. And I told him, I literally smell cigarettes and drugs right in front of my nose, it's right here. And he was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't smell it. And I was like, okay. And so I got up, I became curious. I'm like, what is that? I started to feel a presence near the bed. And very slowly, as I began to focus on this presence that I was feeling, full body apparition started to happen for me. I started to see pants, shirt, neck, face, head, hair, and it was this man. And he said, I was a janitor, and I was an addict in life, and I passed away from cirrhosis because I drank a lot too. And he says, I died in the month of December. I was wearing this brown jacket. And he says, I'm looking to speak to my son. Oh my God. First thing, I call my mom, I'm like, Mom, guess what just happened to me? I saw this person, I smelled this thing. I'm telling her all the details about this experience. And she goes, Alex, shut up. At this time, my mom had just gotten remarried to her husband. And I didn't really have a good relationship with the husband yet, because I lived in California at the time. My mom was in Arizona. We didn't really see each other a lot. So I knew nothing about my mom's husband and his family history. They had just gotten newly married. Anyways, she said, that's exactly how Noah's dad died. That's exactly what he was wearing when he died. That's the month he died. All of it. All of it was completely accurate. And I was like, okay, I'm getting a mentor today. I remember going to Facebook and searching mediumship teacher, and the first person that popped up was this guy named Michael Mayo. I went to his email and I emailed him because I saw that he was having spirit circles, which I did not know what that was, but I was like, I want to do it. I want to try. I want to see what this comes of. And I remember emailing him like, oh my God, this is my first time ever doing it. Can I join? I started going to the spirit circles. And from that point on, he taught me everything that I know about spirit and communication and connection. And that's kind of where it led to me doing professional readings now. And I have lots of stories with all of the sessions that I've done and the amazing things that come forward in mediumship and the continuation of life, which is objective. Mediumship is not subjective. It's something that you can prove through the evidence, through who comes through and what they tell you. And that is objective information that proves the continued existence of spirit. And so I'm just really honored to be able to do this work. It makes me emotional, which I don't cry during readings, but I cry after a lot. But I hope that we can continue to talk about mediumship and development and maybe anything that you guys have questions about. You know my Instagram, you know my YouTube, you know my Spotify, my TikTok, and all of that. It'll be linked in the description. But I'm really excited to have this space to share with you. I want this to be a vulnerable space, a safe space. And actually, I was interviewed on another podcast 2 weeks ago, and I got really vulnerable with this guy. I just felt really safe to talk about my experience with sexual assault, my experience with healing through tantric sex, healing through dance, healing through the body. And I got really vulnerable. That was the first time I ever felt comfortable to talk about these things. I had never told anyone about the way that I heal on a very deep personal level. And he was like, wow. He said to me, I feel like the space just cleared and it feels so safe here. And I told him, spaces are not safe until somebody is willing to be vulnerable first. And so I want to feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable with you so that you feel comfortable enough to have the space be cleared for you to heal your own trauma, your own wounds and hardships. And that is what will make this space very safe, is the willingness to be vulnerable and go deep and to honor the human experience, which is the spiritual experience. Being alive and existing is literally the most spiritual thing you will ever do, is just living. So if you are interested in learning more and connecting, stay tuned. Thank you.